St. Louis, Missouri. One of the largest cities on the Mississippi River, it has faced much adversity over the decades through jobs, population, and even with its sports teams. When the Rams came to St. Louis, the hope was that it would be a cornerstone franchise in the city for generations to come. This, as we know, did not happen, as the team would vacate for Los Angeles in 2016. Rather than simply keeping quiet and letting the NFL walk, the city would fight back, not necessarily for its team, but to make a statement over their move. And in doing so, they were relatively successful. This is how St. Louis beat the NFL. The NFL's history in St. Louis can mostly be summed up in two distinct eras. When the St. Louis Football Cardinals played there from 1960 to 1987, and then, after they left, the Rams playing in St. Louis from 1995 to 2015. In the 20 years that the Rams would exist in St. Louis, the city would be hamstrung by a lease that heavily favored the Rams owner and the NFL. And 2015 would be the year to keep an eye on things, as this would be when the potential and likely opt-out of the stadium lease would occur. However, several events would occur in the lead-up to 2015. First, the owner that would bring the Rams to St. Louis in the first place in Georgia Frontier would pass away in 2008, with then minority owner Stan Kroenke taking over in 2010. Seeing as he was originally from Missouri, on its surface this seemed like a good thing, and he would even verbally commit to St. Louis. However, everything from this point forward would speak otherwise. Aside from rejecting proposed renovations by the city to the dome, he would counter with an impractical renovation plan which involved basically building a whole new stadium out of the old one for not much cheaper than the price of a new one. When this could not be agreed to, it would be then that the Rams would go into a phase of closed doors. However, Kroenke could only keep so much private, as he would buy a massive piece of prime real estate in Los Angeles in 2014. This would come with denials that it would be used for a potential stadium. However, in an effort to quell concerns about teams relocating, the league would adopt a relocation policy. This would be a guideline to keep teams from moving, at least on paper, listing various actions and stipulations that should be fulfilled before a team is moved. 2015 would come and go with a lease opt-out, with Kroenke proposing a stadium in Los Angeles, but no relocation announcement. As such, St. Louis, while declining the renovation proposal for the Edward Jones Dome, would make a late but legitimate push to keep the Rams in St. Louis. A new outdoor stadium on the banks of the Mississippi River would be proposed with $150 million already approved in funding. In addition, over $150 million had been secured for naming rights from National Car Rental in what would be called National Car Rental Field. Though this was late in the process, it was a legitimate effort and proposal, which included over $16 million in funding just to have formal plans. After the 2015 season, Stan Kroenke would make it clear that he was done with St. Louis, not only requesting for a vote to move the team, but also proposing a new and extravagant stadium, while subsequently trashing the city of St. Louis over the course of 29 pages explaining why. And the league would approve, and the Rams would move, not even waiting for the new stadium to be built. However, this isn't where the story ends. In 2017, St. Louis would sue the NFL, not for another team, but for cold hard cash, in the amount of at least $1 billion. Under what argument? The relocation policy. Dating back to the 1980s, the NFL and the United States Conference of Mayors had an agreed-upon written relocation policy, headed by a joint statement of principles that would list several guidelines for owners to follow when attempting to move a team. Never tested in court, there were questions as to whether this was legally enforceable. Guidelines such as negotiating in good faith, providing a reasonable amount of time in notice of relocation, and several other factors would be central to St. Louis's argument in the lawsuit. Also central to the city's argument would be proving that Kroenke, the NFL, and possibly even some of its other owners had been plotting the Rams' move to LA for quite some time. This was the most essential part in proving a guideline violation. How would the NFL side respond to this? As you might expect, deny, deflect, and delay. They would also attempt to try to turn the odds in their favor. The lawsuit would be filed in St. Louis Circuit Court, and the NFL's first move would be to have the case dismissed due to lack of standing. This would fail in late 2017, as the judge presiding, Christopher McGraw, would rule that the policy could be considered as a contract. This may have been the NFL's strongest argument. It was never tested in court before. However, ultimately the policy was written in a way that favored St. Louis and its side of the argument. Second, they would try to get the United States Supreme Court involved and force the trial into arbitration. They wouldn't even hear the case. Then, in 2021, they would simply try to have the case dismissed again, and this again would be denied by the same judge. Then, that same year, the defense would motion for a change in venue, again denied. They would send this to an appeals court, and it would be denied also. So how did this all come to be exactly? Why was it that St. Louis's case was so strong that it made it this far? Well, it goes back to the good faith negotiation guideline. After negotiations for the renovation of the Edward Jones Dome failed in 2012, in the final 3 years that the team was in St. Louis, ownership was basically all in for LA. And while it may not have seemed like it at the time, there would be plenty of evidence. First off, there were public denials from Kroenke, the Rams administration, and the NFL that a move to LA was in the works, when privately, based on the evidence, there was, found through quotes, emails, and other documents. Former head coach Jeff Fisher even said in 2016 that there were plans as far back as 2012 to move to LA. Even though the city was negotiating in good faith, putting millions of dollars towards a new stadium plan, the league and Kroenke whiffed at the St. Louis plan, not even countering. In fact, the league even helped facilitate the move a year in advance by not allowing other teams to relocate to LA in 2015, the year Kroenke's plan was still in development. The league was exposed in declining St. Louis's request for an extra $100 million in stadium loans, requesting $300 million instead of the standard $200 million, when shortly after they would offer that same amount to Oakland or San Diego, or both, to build stadiums in those cities instead of moving to LA. This essentially proved that the league was able to, if willing, to approve the extra money for St. Louis. In fact, in 2020, the NFL loaned through its program an extra $500 million to Stan Kroenke just to finish his stadium when the financials became unfavorable. The relocation policy also suggested that moving a team should not be about money, at least not primarily. Again, there was evidence to suggest that it was. Finally, in November 2021, with all of their legal challenges exhausted, not wanting to take their chances with a Missouri-based jury, the league and Rams ownership would settle for a sum of $790 million, going to the St. Louis side to be divided later. St. Louis, in a rare instance, had beaten the NFL and its owners, and the league would punish Kroenke heavily, making him pay $571 million of the $790, with the rest of the owners splitting the remainder. Did St. Louis get their team back? No. Did they make a statement to the NFL and get an award that made it worth the while? Yes. And it is in this way that St. Louis beat the NFL. Thank you for watching.